Hi there, Megan Thompson with Megan Thompson Coaching, and today we're going to talk about managing the winter blues or the winter chaos that you might be experiencing when parenting a highly sensitive child stuck in the meltdown cycle. So let's get started. Here at MTC, we help parents of highly sensitive kids break out of the meltdown cycle in as little as 8 weeks. We help parents of children ages 2 through 14. Those are 8th graders. And then when we work directly with teenagers and their parents, we work with high school students in the U.S. high school system age group for our teen work, right? So when we think about the meltdown cycle, I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. When I talk about this, what I'm referring to is a sensitive child or teenager who is exhibiting intense behaviors that are out of control multiple times a week, multiple times a day, or at least once a day, right? So what we're talking about is a high frequency and a high level of intensity. So many of you might be experiencing meltdowns that can last for multiple hours, even 30 minutes, all the way down to 10 minutes at a time. But the frequency is important to pay attention to in addition to the duration. So if your child is losing their mind multiple times a day, this is not developmentally appropriate. All right, so what do I mean by losing their mind? Their behavior is out of control and they are not able to manage themselves or regulate this. This might look like their body is on the floor. They are hitting, kicking, throwing things, generally frustrated and irritable all day long. This is a symptom of the meltdown cycle as well. And when we see this, we can see this for children who are shutting down, where they're just not even talking to you at all. And this can be relevant for your 9-year-old, your 10-year-old, even high school students. We see this relevant for our teenagers. The shutdown, isolation cycle, refusal cycle, not attending school is more relevant for older children, but younger children will refuse to follow through on tasks as well. So when we think about the cycle, I'm not really describing behavior that is not seen for children no matter their age, right? You might have a 9-year-old who is really struggling significantly to the point where their body is on the floor and they are hitting and kicking. Same thing for shutdowns and just completely being in a situation where you can't get a word in edgewise. Your child is not hearing you, and that might be true for your 4-year-old. It might be true for your 16-year-old. So we're seeing this high level of frustration, worry, anxiety, aggravation happening multiple times a day. And this level of stress is impacting the whole family, which is why we call it a cycle. Especially when parenting a highly sensitive child, the entire family is stuck in this cycle, and this is what we help parents break out of. And there's a critical component to supporting your sensitive child that many people will not talk about. And that's the purpose of our show here. And what that is the fact that this meltdown cycle is shifted only through a change in the parent-child dynamic, okay? There's countless research studies that speak about the fact that if you don't change the way that you're parenting, if you don't change the way that you are supporting your child, relating to them, setting limits and boundaries, then your child's meltdowns, shutdowns, refusals, they might subside due to any other environmental cause, but what you'll see is a whack-a-mole situation. You'll see another more intense or differently intense behavior pop up, and you might see that as progress or unrelated. But what's critically important to understand in the meltdown cycle is that what we're looking for when you break the cycle, meltdown-free days, meltdown-free weeks, meltdown-free months, okay? And all of those behaviors, hitting, kicking, cursing, throwing things, shutting down, refusing to follow through, all of those behaviors are also dissipating, and they're not happening regularly either. So a highly sensitive child who feels healthy, calm, capable of following their own desires and following through on expectations with you, they're able to creatively solve their problems. A highly sensitive child is able to hear a direction, say, you know what, I have a few more minutes left in my game. Is it okay if I wait? And then accept the limit, whether it's yes you can, or no you can't, we got to go, buddy. And that is regardless of age. That's the creative capacity that a highly sensitive child can demonstrate. So if you're stuck in the meltdown cycle, it's very important for you to notice that this is a subset of highly sensitive children and teenagers. Not all highly sensitive children and teenagers are stuck in the meltdown cycle. And when they are, it's a family dynamic issue. The entire family needs to shift. And you as the parents are at the helm of the family dynamic. Okay, so this is what we're talking about today, specifically related to wintertime, right? Because what you might have noticed for your child is, during the spring and fall, when there's routine and structure that your child can rely on, and you can rely on, your child might fare better in their mood. They might fare better in their emotional expression, because a lot of things are happening that they can expect, and they can get their energy outside, and it's generally positive weather. Where parents typically struggle is, some parents stuck in this cycle will struggle seasonally. All right. And this is important to notice, that the struggle doesn't go away. It just shows up differently in different seasons for some families. This is what we're talking about here. So if you find yourself noticing that when your child is struggling during the winter months, it's important to focus on a few things. We're going to talk about that today. I want to describe this problem though. You might be struggling with noticing for your child what they can be doing with their busy bodies and to exercise their mind and keep their creativity going if they can't go outside regularly, right? It's cold, it's windy, it's rainy, it's bitter, and highly sensitive children can be sensitive to their environment. What happens? They might be even more so responsive to the change in weather compared to either you or their other sensitive siblings or the other siblings that are not sensitive, excuse me. So what does that mean? It means that the wind whipping in your child's face might be intolerable, unbearable for your sensitive child, whereas a non-highly sensitive child might be able to tolerate it because they're really excited about going sledding, right? So when we think about being able to maintain the winter routine and shift out of this dynamic of counting down the days and looking forward to when the sun is more available and is brighter and warmer, I want to give you some key practical components that you need to be focused on in maintaining what works for highly sensitive kids. And one of those things that works particularly is routine. Now, highly sensitive kids thrive on a sense of safety. Safety builds trust, and trust builds follow through with parents and children. And part of that safety is being able to know what to expect, right? So when you know what to expect, then you can trust that you can build skills to persist through challenge if the majority of your life is of routine or is reliable. Okay, so obviously raising kids, as a parent, as we all do, that nothing is a guarantee. There are a lot of changes in life, and we need to be able to tolerate change and move through change and persist through change. And it's also true that your sensitive kid will thrive on being able to rely on a routine. So how do we fix that, right? How do we balance those two things that are true at the same time? Well, first thing is noticing that if your child benefits from access to nature, as we know, nature can be quite healing for highly sensitive kids. It can be really useful tool to make sure that your child goes outside on a daily basis year round. Then it's important to support your sensitive kid in taking action on that, even if the neighborhood isn't hustling and bustling, to keep that pattern regular for your sensitive kid or teen. And doing that consistently will support them in managing their mood. Access to sunshine, being able to get the sun in their eyes to support their circadian rhythm will be really helpful in maintaining sleep, as well as in communicating to their brain wake times, sleep times, etc. Onset and maintenance is what I'm talking about. So sleep onset is going to bed on time, having that not take hours. And then also maintenance, being able to stay asleep throughout the night. So when we think about that, one thing that's important for you to notice for sensitive kids is that you're paying attention to the sensory components to their overwhelm, as I mentioned earlier with the wind. So you want to assess your child and notice how they fit the criteria for highly sensitive trait, DOES, and go ahead and watch my other show or listen to the components of the trait to set up how your child fits that subset, each subset, in order to pay attention to the sensory sensitivities, particularly related to weather, so that your child feels supported in going outside and feels capable in going outside. Now, the next thing that's important is to pay attention, especially to weather appropriate clothing, right? Now, a lot of sensory struggles that highly sensitive kids can have is dealing with multiple layers and the sensation that creates and the level of intensity that creates if they're wearing heavy outerwear. And one thing that we also know, just in terms of the hundreds of families that we've worked with so far, is that a lot of highly sensitive kids can run hot, but it might not be appropriate for your child to go outside without outerwear, right? So it's important to work with your child to find ways to get creative about that. Perhaps silk underwear is more effective for them with a sweatshirt than a big heavy winter coat. And obviously, if you live in Alaska or Canada or any other more northern area around the world, then it's important for you to take into consideration, temperatures and the experience and likelihood of frostbite when your child's playing outside, obviously. But it's also important to pay attention to how you can think outside the box with your child and getting them prepared to manage the change in outerwear is one of the things that is necessary in terms of the winter months. But one thing that parents are often missing in this when we help our clients is focusing on helping your child get ready to get ready. And so preparing for the winter months much earlier is going to be something that you should pay attention to next fall. Supporting your teen or your sensitive child and being able to tolerate heavier clothing when it's less of a necessity is going to be useful, so that when the rubber meets the road, it's time for your child to put on that heavy coat. They are more used to the process, and it's less of a high intense moment where they have to put it on. So pacing that process is true for highly sensitive kids in a lot of different scenarios, but especially related to weather, it's very important. So the next thing that I think is critical is the difference between kids, who have sensory difficulties and sensory overwhelm to the point where it's a diagnosable disorder, sensory processing disorder, compared to highly sensitive children who fit the sensory processing sensitivity trait, which is separate. Highly sensitive children are going to be more overwhelmed by emotional intensity, and that will lead to their inconsistency in struggle with wearing different clothing that creates different sensations. So you can be quite puzzled, right? As a parent, yesterday the coat was fine. Today my kid's stressed and the coat is a disaster. Putting the coats on is a disaster, massive fight, right? So it's important for you to notice that that's not a willful child you're dealing with. Your child is struggling with overwhelm, and that's leading to the intensity that they're experiencing. So there's a big difference between a brain being confused. I can't handle the information that this big heavy coat is giving to my skin, giving to my muscles, giving to my nervous system. That's more of a disordered component, or one might more appropriately say neurodivergent digestion of the information. There's some wires getting crossed in the brain and then the nervous system and communication, compared to stress and overwhelm leading to the difficulty in putting on the coat. When your child is stressed and overwhelmed and then they're refusing to put on their coat, you need to notice that is what the cause is in order to break this pattern down at the root, so that no matter the stress level, your child is able to tolerate wearing weather appropriate clothing. Next, when we look at this, it's important for your child to be able to build insights on cold signals. Okay, so when we think about highly sensitive kids, if you are telling them that it's cold and they need to wear a coat, Your child needs to be able to tolerate cold or in hot weather, right? And understand that. And some children need support in understanding what is cold, what feels cold to them, and allowing that level of awareness and insight is going to support them in managing their follow through on these expectations. Because if they're overwhelmed by the coat and they also feel cold, they're going to need to come up with a solution to that problem, right? But if they're so overwhelmed by the coat and any other stress during the day that they can't even notice that it's cold, then you'll have outright refusal and frozen responsivity. They won't be able to acknowledge with you that the coat is necessary. Okay, so we've got a frozen, broken communication pattern here that is critically important to surpass in order to get your child to follow through on the cold. So you want to be able to support your child in noticing the sensation differences between hot and cold weather, hot and cold experiences, and how they observe that in their everyday life. That is going to support them in being able to be cognizant and organize the experiences when overwhelmed. Okay. So when we look at this, it's important for you as a parent to also manage the awareness of what's likely for your child in these experiences. Because for you, if you're struggling with needing to get out the door and going outside for you is also kind of a not a favorite. I mean, I'm not here to judge. I moved from Massachusetts down to Maryland to deal with less snow, to deal with less cold. I'm not a big cold fan unless I'm out on the mountain engaging in winter sports. And so there's no judgment here for those of you who prefer warm weather. And if you're also stressed out about the winter and stressed out about wanting to get the job done and get from the house to the car, or from the car to the out across the parking lot to the school or to the grocery store, etc., then that level of overwhelm is going to, and frustration is going to increase your tension in the relationship that you have with your child. So you want to make sure that you're also taking care of yourself and paying attention to how you're contributing to the experience. So, as an example, I when it's chilly and perhaps I underestimated how many layers I needed. My daughter is wanting to tell me a story when we get in the car. She's not struggling with the weather, but this is an example, and I'm sharing. Sweetheart, I'm cold. So you can tell me when we're all buckled in. I can't concentrate right now. The wind is too chilly, or same thing with when it's raining, right? So being able to be mindful in those high stress or high action or oriented experiences is going to be useful for you, as well as managing how you address your child in that moment. Get in the car, we'll talk about this later, compared to I'm chilly, I want to hear what you have to say, we'll get in the car soon, right? So big difference in delivery, big difference in your child's ability to hold on to their thought enough, long enough for you to buckle them in, or, close the door and pack the groceries in and then get in the car yourself, right? So when we think about being able to manage your own emotional state, this is a bigger component related to the season itself, right? Because if it's your tendency to hibernate, then you will need to be able to teach your child how to manage their big sensations in their body and their need to dispel energy inside the house too, right? Because if it's difficult for them to go outside and send them out to go play, especially if at this time of year with cold and flu season being running amok, it might be difficult to to have reliable play dates, right? Kids can cancel, parents can cancel pretty last minute related to children waking up with a cold, etc. So paying attention to your motivation and whether or not your outdoor play is contingent upon having friends to make that happen, and big plans, and what you can do to keep that same level of sunshine access and outdoor and fresh air experiencing around your own home, so that continues to be a consistent part of your child's routine. Because the alternative is that we can tend to move into more, like I said, hibernating type behaviors, which can include additional screen time. Let's just throw on a movie, we were going to be out and about, but I'd rather just snuggle. And as an adult, we can manage that and mitigate the effects of that much differently than our children can. So it's important for us to be paying attention to how we can help our children stay active, even in the inside environment. So paying attention to different activities that you can sign your kids up for that require, that can support them with with expelling their energy. And then also having a backup plan for when play dates are canceled last minute, that helps them stay focused and energy, and the energy is expounded. Rock climbing facilities, indoor playgrounds, things of that nature. So that your child, while not getting the outdoor exposure, is still able to be moving outside of the home, so that you have the ability to not just fall into the easier pattern, which is to keep them home, and then you have a situation on your hands where the children are just antsy, and that can lead to meltdowns as well. Okay. So when we think about being able to help your child match your energy and support you in following through on directions, one of the things that can be really useful when you have a child who has a lot of energy, you can't send them outside to expel it. You want to be engaging in games and practices that help them mimic your energy, right? You want to create situations where your child is going up and down with you in energy, so that they're following directions and that they're also practicing regulating with you. So that's the concept of co-regulation. So when we think about that process and having that be part of your routine, then when your child is antsy and ramping up, it's a lot easier for you to engage in games and activities that allow this, because your child is used to it, and it feels much less like an instruction. Hey kid, you're off the chain, you need to go chill out, let's go do this coping skill, right? We know highly sensitive kids can really struggle with that level of being called out, especially if they are stuck in the meltdown cycle and you haven't broken out of it. There's a shame response to that. No, I don't need this skill, what are you talking about? Or any less verbose ways of telling you as a parent that now is not the time that they recognize they need to be managing the intensity in their body and their restlessness. Okay, so if these challenges are things that you are struggling with, this is just one part of the puzzle, right? It's important for you to be able to teach your child to change their behavior consistently by paying attention, like I mentioned earlier, to how you're responding in this environment, playfully engaging your child, two of those things we talked about today, as well as paying attention to supporting your child in communicating their needs throughout the day and decreasing their intense emotions throughout the day, so that you're not engaging in this hostage negotiation situation right when the meltdown's about to happen. We want your child be digesting their emotions all day long, rather than you trying to head the meltdowns off at the pass when your kid's already a 3 out of 5 intensity. Supporting your child in noticing when they are a 1 out of 5, when they're a 2 out of 5, and decreasing that back down to 0, so that it decreases the likelihood of it climbing, right? Now, this can be really hard for some parents, especially if your child appears to go from 0 to 60, 0 to 5, right? I'll keep my metaphor here, my scale appropriate here, in 0 seconds flat, right? And so if that's the case, and it's difficult for you to notice those signs and triggers, then professional support is likely more appropriate. Finding ways to identify how those triggers are happening is something that we help our clients do all the time. Prevention is critical in breaking out of the meltdown cycle, and the other half of that puzzle is how to strategically teach your child to manage their intense emotions, and to do that not just seasonally but year round, right? Share those safe emotions, those intense emotions with you in a safe way, right? Without the hitting, without the kicking, without the yelling. And to do that, it might be appropriate for you to seek professional support. And we're happy to have a conversation about whether or not what we do is going to be useful for you in your family dynamic. So how do you do that? You go ahead over to megathompsoncoaching.com/talk and you book a call with us. If you're parents of a child 8th grade and under, then that link would be most appropriate. Okay, we'll have a conversation with you. We'll talk about where you're struggling, what you're stuck on, how long this challenge has been, relevant for you, and how long what you've been trying to fix it. And then if what we see is what you're challenged with and what you're struggling with is appropriate for the work that we do, then we'll share with you exactly how to break out of that pattern with us on that very same conversation. You can get started right away. If we notice that there's something either more effective, efficient, or speedier for you to break out of that pattern, then we'll share with you that avenue. There might be some steps you need to take before working with us would be appropriate, or working with us might not be appropriate at all, and we'll steer you in that direction, a different direction instead. So we're happy to have that conversation. It's free. And you can book it at meghanthomsoncoaching.com/talk. If you're parenting a teen and your teen is struggling, especially during the winter time, you might see some decrease in their emotional resiliency when it's difficult to get together with their friends and there's not a lot of fun to be had outside of the home. Then you definitely want to be paying attention to how you can get them support and how they can create that level of community year round. And we do that with our teens in the group work that we do. So you head over to meghanthomsoncoaching.com/teen talk, TEENTALK. And when you do that, all one word, that your teen and one of our coaches will talk in addition to with parents to discuss whether or not we can support you and if your teen is ready for that support, and we'll walk you through how that plan can be put into place. Okay. Again, happy to have those conversations. We look forward to talking